This episode is for the writer who wants to actually finish their memoir manuscript. This episode is also part of a 4-part series that I'm running here on the podcast that I'm calling the 12-month memoir. Over the holidays, I was thinking about you and what you might want heading into the new year. And what came through was a month-by-month plan for how to use your time, energy, and money as a memoir writer so that by the end of 12 months, you'll have a finished memoir draft in hand, ready to move into publication. You can catch up on part 1 in episode 113 and part 2 in episode 114. Today, we are getting into part 3. Let's get started. You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started. Okay, so in part 2 of the 12-month memoir, you actually went into deep revisions. I walked you through some of the things that I really focus on with my writers and some of the elements that I look for when I'm looking for a memoir that really flows and paces well, and also what I look for in the scenes and how the writer communicates what they're feeling and experiencing. What you did to do that was you took everything from part 1, that crucial creative foundation, and you applied it in your actual draft through storytelling techniques and writing craft. And like I said in part 2, that is really what writers are typically looking for when they come to work with me. And it clicks into place once I know what they're actually saying. So doing this in the right order is very important. Let's head into what you're going to do next. In month 7, you get to hand off your work to an editor. Again, this is going to be dependent on when your editor is available, when you booked them, etc. That's why I wanted you to start looking for editors actually way back in month 1. So this can be scary. This is vulnerable. It can be emotional. Handing off your work to an editing professional, usually a stranger, that can feel really intimidating. One of the things that's really important to me as a memoir editor, as a publishing professional, is the relationship between editor and writer. That's one of the primary reasons I have this podcast. I want you to get a feel for me, my personality, how I work, how I see things, how I see your writing. I want you to get to know me. And that is one of the reasons why I have platforms like this podcast, like my Instagram account. I want you to get to know me because I can't help you if you don't trust me, and you will not have the experience that you need if you don't trust the professional that you are working with. I am certainly not the only memoir editor out there. I want you to trust who you hire. You are the boss, okay? Trust is the most important factor to consider when you are working with an editor. Qualifications obviously matter, like their skill set. Do they actually know how to do what they do? Yes, that matters. Also, do you trust them? Do you feel like your work would be safe with this person? Do you feel like your story would be safe with this person? So I want you to be discerning. You get to be really picky with the professionals that you work with. So maybe that little soapbox belonged back in part 1 when I told you to start looking into editors. But I wanted to bring it up here because when you are handing off your work to an editor, it can feel really scary. And I just want you to know that I see that. And it's one of the things that I really try to honor and make room for with the writers that I work with. I want you to know that I see the step it is for you to hand off your work to someone new who doesn't know you. If you can trust this person, then it will be easier to hand it off. I want you to be discerning. I want you to listen to your body. I want you to trust your instincts. And when you do hand off your draft to an editor, there's a balance that you need to find as far as like the state of the draft that you are handing over to this editor. I want you to hand over your best work because that makes it easier for me to actually do my job and get really deep. If I am working with something that is as good as you could make it on your own, that allows me to go much deeper than if it's kind of clouded by mistakes and by some messy stuff. So again, there's a balance though between handing over your best work and being stuck in perfectionism. I would rather that you hand me a pretty messy draft than not hand me one at all, right? There's that balance. And you can always reach out to me or to whichever editor you do hire to kind of figure out the balance of what that would be for that editor and what would work for you. I was working with a writer about a year ago, and she kept saying, hey, I want to revise this before I hand it over. And she said that a couple of times. I kept checking back in, and eventually she just said, I'm just going to send you the revisions I've had and then the original manuscript. And I'm so glad that she did. I'm so glad that she just sent me what she had, because then I could see what we were working with. I could tell her, hey, those revisions that you made, they were good. I don't think you need to do that for the whole thing. Like, she thought she had to do that for the whole manuscript. So if you start tipping into that perfectionism and you keep putting off when you submit to an editor, just submit what you have. I would rather that you submit something really messy than wait and not submit anything at all because you want it to be perfect. Okay, so again, there is that balance. So you hand off your work to an editor, and now what? While your editor is doing their job, so this is going into month 8, technically, of the 12-month memoir. While your editor is doing their job, you get to actually lean hard into your author mode. I want you to start building your readership right now, before publication. I will have writers come to me and say, okay, well, when should I start building my online platform? And I will tell them yesterday. It is never too early to start building your online platform as an author. So the way that you do this is you start to have your memoirs conversation online right now before publication. This is when you start to attract the right readers. Again, by now you know who you're talking to. Start talking to them. Start having the conversation now. And that foundation that you built way back in part 1 of this series, this is how you start gathering readers. This is how you start having the conversation now. I'm doing this right now with my memoir. I have an essay collection I'm working on that is nowhere close to being published. I have a Substack account where I'm having this conversation. It's not cannibalizing my memoir, but I'm having the conversation about what I care about, right? This is kind of goes back to your memoir isn't about you. It's about what you did with what happened to you. It's about the conversation. You can have that right now. So use whatever platform you're most comfortable with, but start doing that. Use your time that you have been spending revising and rewriting and editing. Use that now to start building your author platform. In month 9, continue to move down the publishing timeline. So what happens next depends on the timing of your editor, how quickly they get your edits back to you, the types of revisions that will be required of you moving forward. So I'll give you a quick breakdown of the different levels of editing. After a developmental edit, which if you decide to work with a developmental editor, that should happen before those months of revision that we went through back in part 2. That is a lot of the work that I do with my writers is developmental editing. Then you have line edits. And so this is where the editor really gets into your document and refines your work. This is where they go into Microsoft Word track changes and they kind of, make those red line type of edits. We play around with your words. We make sure things flow, check for things like consistency. I can do my best work as a line editor after that developmental edit. After that, then you have copy edits, which is where the editor will fix grammar, punctuation, and usage. So that is really just correcting mistakes, making sure things are consistent. That's a much more kind of transactional edit. And then finally, you have proofreading, where you're just looking for mistakes. So your text should be finalized after line edits. And then as you go into copy edits, you really shouldn't be moving much around at all. So while I designed this series to simplify the publishing process for you and break it down in a really accessible way, the truth is that drafting, editing, and publishing is not linear. It's not a linear experience. You might have to go back and forth. I don't want you to rush it. I don't want you to rush this process or this experience. I do want you to keep moving. So whether you get your line edits back and then you have to do a lot more reworking if you want, maybe you want the editor to kind of go through and do it again. That is also really normal. Maybe you want to hand it off to a beta reader. That is also really normal. Whatever feels right to you. Again, you can talk to your editor and kind of see how they feel about it. Like, okay, what do you think that my work needs? And again, if you trust your editor, then you can trust what they say to you. When I'm working with writers, I always make sure that they know that they are the boss. You are the boss. So I can give my ideas, I can give my insight and perspective and suggestions. You get to decide what feels right for you and your story and your book. So yes, this series is really trying to break this down to make it very accessible. And you could do this in 12 months. a lot of it is going to be dependent on the editors and other professionals that you work with, right? I don't want you to rush it. I do want you to keep moving. So if you do end up doing more revisions and sending it back to an editor, great. When you send it back to the editor, keep working on building your author platform. Just keep moving forward. That is what matters the most. And it's easy to see this stage of publishing, the part where you're not really writing all that much, but you're waiting. It's easy to see that as downtime, or it's not requiring as much from you as drafting did. Here's what one of my clients said to me as we wrapped up our developmental work last year. I thought that when I finished that first draft, that was the hard part. Then I thought the edits were the hard part. And there's just a new hard part the more she does this. And that is, we laugh about it. I don't want you to be discouraged about it. I just want you to see this process as, okay, once you do one thing, then you get to learn how to do another. Then there's a different way you get to use your brain. And that's why in my containers with my writers, in the memoir method, I really want to train your brain to think like an editor. I want to show you how to look at your work the way that I look at your work. Because that's going to give you an edge as you are navigating this process, as you are learning new things and trying to catch up to the learning curve with publishing and editing, all of these things. One, I want it to be fun. I want it to be fun for you, and I want you to feel empowered and confident as you do so. And one of the best ways to do that is to learn how to look at your work editorially, how to look at your work the way that I look at your work. And that is really what I do inside of the memoir method. Publishing a memoir is so much more akin to a marathon than it is to a sprint, maybe an ultra marathon, perhaps. And that is why I created this series, so that you know how to strategically use your time, energy, and your money as you get your story out into the world. This blend of intuitive creativity and strategic creativity is exactly what I teach writers inside of the Memoir Method program. So this is my program that it blends coursework with coaching, with actual editing and revisions. We kick off the winter cohort in just a few days on Monday, January 26th. And I would love, love, love to have you in the room with us. This container is singular. I haven't seen anything like this for memoir writers online yet. And I want to give you the knowledge that you need and also the perspective, like the guidance that you need to integrate it. Like knowledge without integration is just noise. And you have enough noise in your life right now. I want you to really learn how to write and edit smarter. I want you to know how you need to be using your time, and I want you to feel confident in how you do so. And that is exactly what you will gain inside of the Memoir Method. The link to join us is in the show notes. Again, we kick off in just a few days. I'm really excited to see you there. We have a really great group of writers shaping up right now. So I will see you inside the Memoir Method. We have one more part to this series. 2 episodes are dropping today, so that it should already be in your feed. And I will see you in our final part of the series.
You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejanewrites. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.